Welcome to the Options Foundation course on Udemy. My name is Hari Swaminathan. I'm the founder of OptionTiger.com, a cutting-edge options education, trading, and trading ideas website. I have a bachelor's degree in engineering from India and an MBA from Columbia Business School in New York. In the previous course, we studied all the basics of call options, put options, as well as we looked at how traders or investors could use a combination of stocks and options to come up with some very creative strategies. In this course, the Options Foundation course, we are going to tackle all the remaining aspects of the theory that we did not cover in the course 1. Now, these topics are time decay, implied volatility, and the Greeks. As part of the Greeks, there are 4 Greeks that you have to study. It's the delta, gamma, theta, and vega. But before we get to the Greeks, we have to understand the concepts of time decay and implied volatility. If you recall, in course 1, we knew that there were 3 main factors that affect option prices. And those are the price of the underlying stock, the strike price of the option. So the two combined together, we're really trying to see how far the strike price is from the current trading price of the stock. So that's what we're really concerned with. So I think in our examples, Apple was around $460. So an option that's at 500 strike price is going to be priced differently from an option that is at a strike price of 550. How far is the strike price from the current trading price of the stock? So those two factors combined together contributes to one real factor, which is the price movement of the underlying and how far the strike price is. The second factor was time decay. And we briefly touched upon the fact that time decay hurts buyers of options because the burden of price movement is on the buyer. The third concept that we are going to study is implied volatility. And again, we saw a brief example of how volatile IBM can be, how volatile Netflix can be, or Apple can be. But implied volatility is a very critical aspect of options pricing. So we'll be looking at that as well. Once you've covered these two concepts, then is a detailed study of the Greeks. Like we said, there are 3 main factors that affect options pricing. One is price movement of the stock, one is time decay, and one is implied volatility. And each one of them have their Greek of their own, except for price movement, which is so important that it has 2 Greeks to tell you what will happen to your options price for a given price movement of the underlying stock. The best way to understand the concept of time decay is to look at our examples that we studied in the call options and put options case. So let's just do a slight recap of the 2 examples. In the first case, we have the house. The house was worth $1 million. And we bought at the money, $1 million option, which had an expiry of 60 days, and we paid a premium of $25,000 for this option. Now, the buyer would lose this money if the value does not move up to $1,025,000. And the seller is fine with no movement because he can keep the $25,000 as premium. In fact, he gets to keep the premium regardless of what the buyer decides to do, whether he decides to exercise his option to buy the house or not. The seller receives the $25,000 in premium right away. So this is our house example. And what we are going to do is assume that for the next 60 days, the value of this house does not change. So it remains at $1 million and it did not change at all. But what we're going to do is think about the mindsets of the buyer and seller, one after 30 days and then again after 50 days. So let's assume that 30 days go by and the value of the house has not changed. So think about what is going on in the buyer's mind and what is going on in the seller's mind. In the buyer's mind, he's getting a little concerned because 30 days have passed and the value of this house has not changed. And again, we are looking at it strictly from a financial standpoint at this time. And so the value has not changed. And so he knows that he has only 30 days more for the price of the house to increase and increase in value. And if that doesn't happen, then basically time is running out on the buyer. So this is what we mean by saying time decay is an option buyer's enemy. But if you look at it from the seller's angle, he's fine with no movement in price because he's got the $25,000 in premium. He is perfectly fine if the value of the house does not increase or if it goes down. Just speaking from this option's perspective, the seller is fine with no movement or movement to the downside, whereas the buyer is getting concerned. Now, assume that there was an options exchange for this kind of an options contract. So assume that you had an exchange where we could go to that exchange and buy and sell options on real estate and house deals like these. So along with us as the buyer of this house, we also have several other buyers, and there's a central clearing exchange where you can go and trade these options. So if we were to trade in our option after 30 days, if we went to this exchange and we wanted to sell it, do you think we're going to get $25,000 for this option? We're not going to get it because everybody knows that there's only 30 days left for this option contract to expire. And so we are probably going to get maybe $15,000 for it. Because people know there's only 30 days left. So now, obviously, what happened to the 10,000? The 10,000 was lost in time decay. And this is why options are considered wasting assets. Because every day of the life of that option, it loses a certain amount of its value due to time decay. Now, let's fast forward a few more days, and let's say 50 days have gone by, and we only have 10 days left for this option in this option's life. And the price hasn't moved. It's still at 1 million. So now the buyer is really concerned because there's absolutely, it looks like he's totally running out of time, and there's no way that he can recover the cost of this option. If he tries to sell it, he's probably going to get less than 7,000 or 6,000 for this option. And so you can see that now time decay is really eroding the value of this option as you approach expiry. And in fact, we'll go on the real platform and we'll see that time decay starts to become exponential as you approach expiry. So which means as you approach expiry, time decay for today is going to be more than what it was yesterday, and time decay for tomorrow is going to be more than what it was today. So this is a feature that we'll go into the real platform and we'll take a look at Apple options to understand that. So this is as far as the house example is concerned. So it's pretty clear. As time winds down, time decay is going to hurt the buyer and it's going to benefit the seller. Now let's take a look at our insurance example. In this example, we bought a car. It was $20,000 in value. We also bought an insurance policy for 1 year and we paid $1,000 as premium for this option. And we called this option a put option, and it is a put option. And as a buyer of insurance, we lose this $1,000 whether anything happens to the car or not. So that money is gone to the insurance company. The insurance company is the seller of this put option, and that this money is gone to them. So now let's assume, and we're going to sort of indulge in a little fantasy here, but let's assume that an insurance policy can also be sold with your car if you sell your car to a new buyer. And so as the buyer of this car and this policy, let's say we wanted to sell the car after 9 months along with this policy to a new buyer. So the new buyer sees there's only 3 months left on the policy. So what can we get for the put option? What can we get for this insurance policy? Do you think we can get $1,000? No, it's impossible because the new buyer knows there's only three months left on this policy and perhaps he'll give you $300. And fast forward some more, assume there's only 1 month left, and how much can you get for this? You're probably not even going to get $300. You may get maybe $80 or $100. So that's precisely how the concept of time decay works on both of these cases. Let's just take a recap of what we've seen so far in time decay and also look at the buyer-seller perspectives on time decay. As an option buyer, you want movement. So your position is a directional position. So what do we mean by directional position? If you bought a call option, then you're directional on the bullish side because you want the stock to move up. Therefore, your option price is going to also move up and you can sell your call option for a higher price than what you bought it for. If you bought a put option, then you want the price of the stock to go down and you can sell your put option for a higher price because put options will increase in value if the stock goes down. So as an option buyer, you want movement. You want your stock to move in the direction of your position. And because you paid a premium to buy this option, remember, you're starting off on a slightly negative note. So whenever you see the profit and loss profiles, you'll see that you're entering the position at a disadvantage because of this premium that you paid. And therefore, whatever move the stock does has to overcome this premium within that certain amount of time. So as an option seller, you're entering the transaction at an advantage because you're picking up this premium, and by picking up this premium, you're putting the burden of movement on the option buyer. So this is a very key characteristic between a buyer and a seller. And if we've spoken about this before a couple of times, if you felt that the risk and reward profile was skewed towards the buyer because the buyer has unlimited profits but limited losses, whereas the seller has limited profits and unlimited losses. So now once you throw this into the equation, you know that the time decay is working in favor of the seller. So if there is no movement, the seller is benefiting. So for every day that the option doesn't move or the stock or the asset doesn't move, the seller is benefiting from this position. So time decay is what we call the great equalizer between the risk and reward profile of a buyer and a seller. If you did not have time decay, your hunch would be right that the risk and reward is skewed towards the buyer. But as you'll see, time decay is a very powerful element in options trading. And if you add time decay into this mix, then it totally equalizes the risk and reward profile between a buyer and a seller. So this is a very important characteristic. A lot of option strategies are based upon time decay. And in fact, it's also said that over 60 or 70% of advanced options traders do end up with a seller profile. So which means they construct a time decay strategy for their options. And I can tell you that's very true because almost 80 to 90% of the strategies I put today are all based upon time decay in some form or the other. So that's what the risk and reward profile looks like. Time decay is the great equalizer and between a buyer and a seller. In the next lecture, we're going to go over to the trading platform. We're going to go to Thinkorswim and we'll look at Apple options, and you'll understand clearly how time decay works in favor of the seller. And we'll also look at the exact mechanics of time decay. We'll look at actual options, we'll look at various monthly series and understand how time decay is working on these options. Now, time decay is defined, it's quantified by the Greek theta. And of course, we're not going to cover too much about theta here because we just want to convey the concepts of time decay. But in a later section, we are covering the Greeks and we'll be covering theta in that section. Okay, so we head over to lecture number 2 on the Think or Swim platform. Thank you.